Call to order the Committee of the Whole meeting for Tuesday, May 28th, 2024. First item on our agenda this evening is roll call.
Barraza, Lancy,
Here.
Beck, here, Pieper, Chanzit, Sofa,
Here.
Wolf,
Here.
Barron, Lehman, here, Ayazi,
Here.
Malay, Ewer,
Here.
Cerrone, Vogelsinger, here.
And Alderman Cerrone did let me know that he's going to be a little bit late tonight. Yep. Okay, we do have the necessary people to conduct business tonight. Reminder, please speak directly into the microphone if you come up to address us tonight, and we only need your name for the record. And then item number 3 will, excuse me, would be approval of the minutes for April 23rd, 2024 and May 6th, 2024, special cow meeting.
Alan?
Yes.
I believe I have a change to the Committee of the Whole minutes. I believe both me and Malay voted against the Ashton Ridge subdivision ones, and I'm listed as an aye.
Okay. Can we note that and have that changed?
For the regular cow?
For the regular cow for Ashton Ridge.
I think 3 different.
I think it was everything but the tree preservation, wasn't it?
I voted aye on the tree preservation, but nay on the.
They might have gotten me for
There were 3 negative
Yeah.
votes. There were 3 negative votes at the committee. So it was Abby, Malay, and
Yeah, I think actually Pieper too.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I believe it was 3 on
3 votes
first
against
3.
everything except for the tree preservation. Tree preservation was unanimous.
Yeah, tree preservation was the only one that was unanimous.
Right.
Okay. So with those changes, could I get a motion to recommend to council approval of those minutes?
So moved.
Motion by Vogelsinger, second by, am I blanking out? Sofa. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, then on to item number 4, which is items removed, added, or changed. Do we have anything this evening? No changes? Okay. And we'll move right on to item 5, which is matters from the public for items not on the agenda. Do we have anybody here for anything not on the agenda? Okay, come on up.
Hey there, my name is Brian Schutte. I'm here with another member from the Skyline Drive Citizens Committee. We're very much aware that the project has not been dismissed. You guys are waiting on meetings with City of Batavia staff and I believe King County Sheriff and Geneva Township. Just wanted to, kind of say that we're present and we're available. I know you guys have been having some long meetings lately, and hopefully tonight will not be a super long meeting for you guys. We're just making ourselves available if you're at all interested in discussing the project or any of the aspects of it. We're certainly residents and representatives of the neighborhood and the community there. So if you have any questions or anything for us, then we'd like to make ourselves available at the end of the night if you have any, time to chat or any questions or anything like that. So that's it. If you have any questions now, I'd be more than happy to take them.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you didn't want to sit here, we could just ask if anybody has any questions for them at this point.
I know it's a little kind of out of the blue. Nobody was, prepared for it specifically right now. So
Not on the agenda, so we're not prepared to discuss anything tonight. So
Yeah,
you wouldn't have to sit here all night if we're not going to ask you any questions. I wouldn't ask you to do that.
Perfect. Well, if anybody, is interested in a less formal discussion after the fact, didn't want to take up much time, just say we're making ourselves available to you. So,
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay, and I do have 2 things that I want to bring up under this because we don't have them on the agenda tonight. One was there's been talk, and we had discussed this earlier about tables for River Street. Over the last 2 weeks that I've been down there, there's been really not much in the way of available space once it gets packed down there during the farmer's market. So I did have email back and forth with Scott. He was aware of that, Scott Haynes, and he's going to be getting some tables down there this week before the weekend. So the main thing is to get those placed where they're not in the traffic lane that has to remain open for the one-way. And then they'd be available also during times when the street is shut down for events. The other thing was the reroute of the bike path, or trying to publicize that and get that out there to keep people out of the gravel pit that's out there right now. I went down there again this weekend, and I am just amazed at how people will do whatever they have to do to avoid even the caution tape. And, you know, I don't know what else we could do to stop people from going past barricades. So hopefully they'll follow the signs that are going to go up out there, that Public Works is getting out there to try to direct people out to the sidewalk along Route 31 from whatever street they come up on, and then all the way down to Union Street, and then on the south side of Union Street, so that they can safely traverse their way down there. I personally saw 2 people go down in the gravel this weekend, and it's just unreal that they, think that that's how they can do that. But it's not a pretty sight in the construction zone right now, and I just hope people really start to follow what we've got out there. So I know Lori's going to try and get this out as much as possible on social media and try to make sure that we just keep repeating that and getting that out there, so that way hopefully nobody gets hurt in that and stays out of the construction zone. Anybody else got anything? Okay, then we'll go on to the consent agenda. Gabby, in Dan's absence.
The consent agenda reads as follows. Resolution 2024-81-R requesting a permit from IDOT for the closure of Route 31 for the 2024 July 4th fireworks display. Resolution 2024-83-R, a bid, the award for firewall security upgrade. Resolution 2024-84-R, authorization to execute task order number 43 with Engineering Enterprises Incorporated for the 2024 Full Waterworks System Hydraulic Model Update. Resolution 2024-85-R, authorizing a contract with FGM Architects for Police Department Space Needs Analysis and Master Plan. Resolution 24-86-R, approving a contract with Ray's Electric Contractor to perform 35 kilovolt underground circuit upgrade in the industrial area along Douglas Road in the amount of $56,432, which includes 10% contingency amount. Your Honor, I would move we approve the consent agenda as read.
Motion by Beck, second by Solfa. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Okay, then we'll go on to item number 7, which is ordinance 2024-37, approving downtown plan as part of the comprehensive plan. Drew, I guess you get to start us off on this one.
Sure, I'll get started. It's actually, it should be ordinance 24035. It looks like it was on the agenda incorrectly, but so tonight is the adoption of the downtown plan as an element of the overall comprehensive plan. This is a item that did start this past, or in June of 22 is when the council did give us direction to get started on this. We've been working since July of 22 on that process and gotten to the point where we now have the final draft before you tonight. The plan overall is basically broken up into 6 major sections. The downtown area itself is included in 8 defined sub-areas within the plan, with each sub-area receiving specific recommendations in regards to building height, parking, and other specific items like design in those areas. There's also several opportunity sites, as well as what the plan calls catalyst sites, are identified in the plan, as well, that discuss specific properties. At the public hearing, there were about 4 speakers that addressed the commission, as well as the commission's own discussion of the plan that led to some changes that were in the April 12th version of the draft that's before you tonight. So we do have Tricia Park from Housing Levine here tonight to provide you a presentation about the plan. And then after that, if there's any discussion, we can have that before the council takes any sort of action. So.
Welcome.
Am I going to Zoom and screen sharing? Is that what I'm doing here?
We need to do a share.
Am I already screen sharing? Okay. Sorry. All right. Thank you for having me tonight. So I'm just going to give you an overview of the draft downtown plan. So my name is Trisha Parks. Our agenda for tonight, I'm just going to give you kind of a project overview, give you an idea of what we did for community outreach, and then go over next steps, which is just going to be a few because we're at the very tail end of the process. And if you do have any questions after tonight, that if you think of something later, you can always email Drew, and then that will get to us. So project overview, this has been a 7-step process. We are, of course, in the final downtown plan and adoption phase. For community outreach, we've had pretty extensive community outreach throughout the process. As part of the plan, in the outreach process, we formed a DPAC, which is an advisory committee. So this included a broad range of people. So this is elected and appointed officials, stakeholders, property owners, business owners. We met several times throughout the process, to kick off the process, go over the existing conditions. We reviewed the vision goals and the sub areas with them, gave them a framework of the plan, and then we also presented a draft to them. So they kind of just served as like a touching stone throughout the process. We also had quite a bit of in-person outreach. You could see all the things listed here. So we met with department heads, Main Street, businesses, had stakeholder and focus group interviews. Of course, we had 2 open houses to present the draft plan, a downtown visioning workshop, which is pictured here, which was a fun mapping exercise we did with the community. So a lot of opportunity for in-person outreach. We also had online outreach. So we had an online survey, which had a great response of over 400 people taking that survey. We also had Map Social, which is pictured here. So this is an online outreach mapping tool where people can come and drop points, lines, polygons of issues, opportunities, things they like, things they don't like, and they can leave comments. So over the process, we had over 700 points of engagement. So now I'm just going to move into going over what came of that, what came with the downtown plan. So this is a 7-chapter document. I'll just go through each one kind of briefly. So about the plan, so that's really just giving you an overview of what the plan is. Again, an overview of what the process was. This is where you can find information about the community outreach that I just discussed, how we determined the downtown boundary. So just giving that, what is the plan, what's the purpose, what are we trying to do here? A role of the downtown. This is just kind of a short, simple chapter, just giving an overview of what a downtown is to a community when it's really that kind of heart of the community. When you're thinking of what a town is, or someone mentions a town, the first thing you normally think of is what their downtown is like. Most of the times, it's where you go to have those gathering events. It's the heart of the community. Vision and goals, another short and sweet chapter, just giving you the vision statement, so that aspirational narrative, what we wanted, what the vision of the plan is. So 20 years from now, what the downtown is aspiring to be. Also, we have the plan goals. We have 5 plan goals, which is ensure quality development, leverage the Fox River, capitalize on existing assets, strengthen downtown's image and identity, improve modes of transportation. So these really came out of community outreach. So, you know, when we're developing these vision statements and the plan goals, we, you know, do a lot of looking back at the outreach we've heard so far and kind of like use those as our foundation for developing these. Land use and development chapter. So as you mentioned, we have 8 sub-areas, or we call them functional sub-areas within the downtown. So we have recommendations for each one. We're touching on what the appropriate land use mix is within each one, design and development, what parking should be like, and also its relation to surrounding areas. So that includes the functional sub-areas next door, and also, you know, that surrounding neighborhood context. So we also have a table that provides the appropriate land uses within each functional sub-area. We have whether it's either preferable, compatible, or discouraged based on the use and the functional sub-area. So, and we also have an opportunity sites map. So we have 2 different opportunity sites. We have redevelopment site and catalyst site. We have descriptions of what each site should be in the future, what our recommended use or the characteristics of each site is for each one. For catalyst sites, we kind of took it a step further and we provided a 3D visualization of what that could look like. So site 5, Washington Avenue. So the idea here is it's kind of, obviously this site is on River Street and it's on that elevation. So we kind of needed to break it up a bit so it's not overbearing. We wanted to show something that was context sensitive on River Street, something that wasn't too large, because one of the things we heard throughout outreach is we don't want something too tall, especially along the river. We don't want to kind of like create that tunnel. So we're trying to activate, you know, Wilson and also River Street without being overbearing. Site 10, that's the one on the left. So this is kind of in the transition zone between commercial area and then some residential. So we're proposing a townhome or kind of duplex, single family attached here to create that transition between single family and that commercial area. Site 19 is Shumway Avenue. So this is kind of a large site. So we're proposing on First having a kind of a smaller building that's mixed use, that's context sensitive to the existing historic building that's right on the corner. And then as you're moving away or moving south, transitioning into multifamily. And then at the very end, site number 1 or number 1 on that image, the call out, if you can see that, that's a parking deck. So that would be like a centralized parking deck. So that'd be for the multifamily that's there and also for public parking. And it kind of creates that separation between the existing wastewater treatment facility that's there. Finally, the last catalyst site is kind of a combo of 2, site 14 and 15. So one of the things we heard throughout outreach was activating the riverfront. So the buildings that are right on the river in that location currently are kind of turning their back to the river. So we wanted to show something that, one, extended the Riverwalk up north, and also having something that, faces the river, or at least like provides, public access to it. And then the rest of the site is just a series of mixed use buildings. And then you can see number 4, that is the boardwalk shop. So if those ever were to relocate, this could be a potential location for a permanent location for them. Also in this chapter, we touch on historic preservation. Of course, there's a number of historic assets within the downtown, and you, of course, have a historic district. So we wanted to make sure that we are touching on that and recommending that assets are preserved and highlighted. Private investment is also talked about in this chapter. So, what are some of the incremental, improvements that we can recommend? So adaptive reuse, a small thing that could be done is an implementation award program. So that's just highlighting or acknowledging businesses that are taking steps and to improve their property. That's getting us towards the end goal of what we want to envision for the downtown. We also highlight existing investment programs, how you could, simply activate a vacant storefront by, using art or signage to make it more attractive in the interim. And we also touch on how we could potentially, get investment in those vacant buildings and sites. So there's a number of recommendations or potentials listed here. So touching on maybe marketing, adaptive reuse of the properties, incentivizing retrofits of properties, looking at public and private partnerships, streamlining the permitting process and things like that to help to jumpstart the development or, getting investment in these properties and businesses in the storefronts. The next chapter is access and mobility. So we're looking at planned improvements. So there are a number of planned improvements within the downtown. So we highlighted them here on the map. So notably, the road diet along 31, a potential signal along Wilson, and mentioned throughout outreach was the desire for a second bridge, which has previously been discussed. So we showed that here as well. Parking, so we talk, as I mentioned in one of the catalyst sites, is centralized parking, so that parking deck. So there is a map I'll show on this page. We have, several locations where, the orange hatched area, those could be, those are our three of the four catalyst sites. Those areas could be good locations for centralized parking. We also talk about if a parking deck was to be included in any of the development, like what that should look like. It shouldn't look like it should look like the architecture and, be of a quality. We also talk about, ADA requirements of parking and things like that. Pedestrian gaps. So you guys do have a pretty solid pedestrian network, but there are a couple of gaps in the sidewalk. So we do highlight them here and note that, those are gaps that need to be filled. Bike facilities. So we have a number of areas where we highlight, bike improvements. So some of these, so you can see the yellow that's coming out of an existing plan. So that's the 2023 bike and pedestrian planned improvements that we're showing here. You could also see a number of areas where we suggest extending the river walk. That's that dashed green line. Urban design. So we talk about public realm improvements. So this is this section is public spaces. So of course we have a number of public spaces existing. So like River Street, how we can incorporate additional public plazas and pocket parks, how some of these spaces could be educational about the history of Batavia. We show a map of potential locations for additional public gathering spaces. Streetscaping. So there we have 4 tiers of streetscaping here. So tier 1 is your primary streets. So that would be what you currently see along Wilson and River Street. So areas that really have all of the the streetscape elements that you can think of, all of the bells and whistles. Tier 2 is just a step down from that, so still has those decorative streetscape elements that correlate or tie into Tier 1, but they're kind of secondary. You're kind of moving away from kind of the core active areas. Tertiary, you're again stepping back just a bit, so they still have streetscape elements, but not everything. And then Tier 4 is those residential streets. So that's what you think of. It's just like a sidewalk, parkway, and street trees. Gateway and wayfinding. So we identify areas of potential new signage or improved signage, both coming into downtown from the periphery when you kind of get to the core of the downtown. And we also have suggestions on locations for trail signage. So if you're on the trail, where you can get off, what you could do once you get off the trail, leading you to places of interest within the downtown. Activating the riverfront. So we do touch briefly on the in-process plan for the dam. We touch on potential locations for new points of access within or along the river. The ones that you see here, they're south towards Clark Island. So those are part of, those have been identified as part of the Clark Island plan done by the Batavia Park District. Kind of the most notable thing along here is the private development riverfront activation area. As I mentioned, activating the riverfront was a huge part of outreach. That was said by a lot of people, so we want to make sure that we're noting it here. And of course, a lot of the land that is along the riverfront, at least in the core, is privately owned. So that takes time and effort by the private developers. So we want to make sure we're highlighting it here. So it's noted, if you ever get a redevelopment along the riverfront, you can point at this and say, this is what we'd like. We want to see some riverfront activation. Built form and character. So I mentioned previously that building height was discussed specifically along the riverfront. So we want to see some height within the core, but we also want to be sensitive to the river. We don't want it, we don't want all these tall buildings kind of looming over the water. We want to maintain the views. So we have this map that suggests the max building height by functional subarea. There is more detail on this within each functional subarea and specifically within the opportunity sites that are along the river. So this is, it's kind of meant to be a bit flexible. We do talk about building height along the river within the plan and making sure that views of the river are maintained. Parks and open space. So this section really kind of calls from the recent 2021 Park District comprehensive plan or comprehensive master plan that was done. So a lot of the recommendations in here are noting that plan and making sure that this plan talks with theirs. The final chapter is implementation. So this chapter is really just that. It's talking about how to use the plan, how to update the plan, potential partners. It has an action matrix that identifies, it takes the recommendations from the plan, identifies what the key action is, whether it's a high, low, or medium. Sorry, I said that odd order, low, medium, or high priority, and then who your potential partner is. Because of course, the city can't do everything. So who could they partner with, or who can you partner with to, implement these recommendations? We also have a section called implementation through regulation. So this kind of just talks about what zoning changes could be made in order to help facilitate these implementation or these recommendations. So you can see in the table on the right, so what is the plan recommendation, and then what is the zoning action that could be taken to help implement. I think I said the implementation was the last chapter, but I lied because we have design guidelines as well. So these are just, these are recommendations or kind of built environment recommendations for a number of things. So we're looking at windows, architectural signs, awnings, lighting, building height, bulk, roofs. So this is trying to help identify the character that you're trying to achieve within the downtown. Lots of things. All right, so that's an overview of the plan. Let me just go over quickly next steps. This is very fast. So we have a meeting scheduled for next Monday, June 3rd, hopefully for adoption of this plan. Part of the process includes a story map, which I could go over with you all next week. It's in draft mode right now. So that's going to be basically an online kind of executive summary, I would say, of the plan. So it's mostly map based. So a lot of the maps that you see tonight will be, you'll be able to zoom in, click, and then I'll have some brief text on the side. So it'll be kind of like an online executive summary is the intent of the story map. So that will be once the plan's adopted and everything's finalized, we could put a bow on that, and then that could be hosted on the city's website. So any questions? Anything you want me to go over in more detail?
Anybody have any questions? Abby?
This might be a question for our own staff, but what does implementation really look like then after June 7th? Is this going to be integrated into our strategic plan? Are those items on the action matrix going to be kind of prioritized so that we actually have a timeline, or what does it look like?
This is probably going to be a plan within a plan. The strategic plan kind of gives the broad overview of things that we're going to do. And there's a lot, obviously, in this. So it's going to be a matter of, trying to prioritize those various items in the implementation matrix and, bring forward changes that are going to be necessary to codify certain things. So, we're going to have to look at that in more detail and kind of develop our own prioritization it's been prioritized in the plan, but, we'll have to, put that into our work plan and try and see when we can implement different things. But, I anticipate you're going to see a lot of different things coming forward. Most of them are going to have to go to the Plan Commission because they're going to involve zoning ordinance amendments and maybe some map amendments as well. As part of the process, but it's going to take time, and there's a lot there. So it's going to be an ongoing process.
Else? Jen, do you have any questions online?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Abby?
If not, I have two other they're going to sound like wordsmithing things, but they're kind of based in just a philosophical question that I have. So in the vision statement, in the very first paragraph, so in some of the other like civic and urban resources that I regularly follow, they often talk about how if you improve a place for its residents, you will attract tourists. If you try to improve a place to attract tourists, you're not necessarily going to improve a place for its residents. And the very first line of the vision statement talks about attracting visitors. And when I first read through it, that's what went through my mind, is that we're just trying to attract, out-of-towners to town, which then as I read through it, I was like, okay, maybe they just mean people that don't live downtown. But as someone who lives on the map, I'm not in like the main boundary, but I live Mark lives in the map that is shown on every other page. And I think Dustin does too. Like, it just struck me as no, this is a plan by Batavians for Batavians. And we should just not focus on visitors, focus on residents and talk about attracting visitors at a later time or in a later paragraph and not in the very first line of our vision statement. So that was just one thing. And then there was, in the action matrix, it says improve pedestrian, oh no, I don't know what it says. I rewrote it in my notes. I think it says something about alleviating congestion to improve pedestrian and bicycling safety or connections. And in my head, the action matrix,
Like what you're looking at specifically, what page is it?
I copied and pasted it so that I had all my notes in one place. The action matrix is on page 115. Nope.
I think it's 115 on the PDF maybe, because I think it's 110 on the.
No, it's
page.
110.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I went to the wrong grid.
All right.
It
Is
says,
that
yeah,
B1 that you were asking about?
alleviate congestion on Wilson Street to improve pedestrian and bicyclist connection across the river. So I would just recommend that something in here also say that improve pedestrian and bicyclist safety and connections in order to alleviate congestion, because the only way that we really alleviate congestion is getting more cars off the road, and we won't get more cars off the road unless we give people a viable alternative mode of transportation. So it was just, that is kind of a wordsmithing, but also based in.
Would you like flip it? Okay.
Okay, and then I found something else, but it's not worth bringing up here, but I will send an email to. No.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you. So I think if we get those two little things changed, I'm fine with that. 'Cause I think I didn't read that much into it as you did. Does anybody want to make a motion to recommend to council ordinance 2024-35, approving the downtown plan as part of the comprehensive plan?
So moved.
Before we vote, ask one question. Something that keeps coming up, and this is kind of balanced it out at the end, but up front, there's always this message out there that nobody wants tall buildings. And I know there was some pushback on the height of there, but I don't know if we ever came to consensus on that. And B, I just want to make sure we're not pushing away or turning away any opportunities or any developers that could come in here with ideas. Not saying we would propose a 10-story building or anything, but I wouldn't want to limit anything, because I don't know if that was ever really, there were concerns, but I don't know if we ever came to consensus that we don't want anything tall.
Yeah, does this plan institute any maximums, or is it just recommendations?
It's all recommendations. Your zoning is going to be the thing that is going to, dictate that. Our goal for how we wrote it was to provide, opportunity for height, but also, we're trying to be flexible. So,
And you said that at the end, you definitely made sure it was stated that we can be flexible, which I liked, but I wasn't sure why it was in there in the first place, but.
yeah, I mean, it was a discussion that was had, so we wanted to make sure that the plan did address it. But of course, we don't want to be overly prescriptive, and the river is an important asset, and so we wanted to make sure that, some development, it makes sense, like they're going to only come because they can get the height, and that makes the numbers work. So we wanted to make sure that it makes development feasible, but also acknowledge that the river is an important asset, and if we are going to have height there, that it needs to be designed. How we worded it, I believe, is like it's designed in a way that isn't like overly cumbersome to the river, which could be, setbacks
And
or
I agree with that.
including open space or public access. So we're trying to not be overly prescriptive there.
I wasn't sure, and you did a good job, and that was fine, but I wasn't sure if we ever I know there were always, when we were building that, people came and, are you crazy? Like there were people against it, but I don't know if we ever came to terms in our plan that with the limit or anything like that. I just wasn't sure.
And some of this came from the input of, the steering committee and the public and everything else as part of that. And keep in mind, right now this is a guideline. So, if we implement anything, right now the zoning code is going to allow some things that are not in line with what the plan would be. So as part of the implementation, we'd be coming back to you with, perhaps some zoning changes that would then implement that. I would anticipate that there would be some level of, deviation or flexibility that would be built into those code amendments. So if you find something that, okay, it only is a 3-story building, allowed in this zone, but you've got this building that just looks amazing, as part of, what's being proposed, then yeah, you could, allow for some kind of deviation as part of that plan development amendment or whatever the case may be once we come forward with the actual code amendments.
I'll second that.
Okay. So we have a motion by Vogelsinger, second by Saron. Roll call, please.
Baraza, Lancy,
Aye.
Beck,
Aye.
Pieper, Jansit, Sofa,
Aye.
Wolf,
Aye.
Barron,
Aye.
Lehman, Ayazi, Malay, Ewer, Saron,
Aye.
Vogelsinger.
Aye.
So that's 10.
We'll go to council with positive recommendation.
Mr. Chair, I'd also just like to say thank you to everybody that was involved in this whole project. It was a long project, but it was necessary and there's a lot of detail into it. So I want to thank the Housing Levine team, Tricia and Nick, and everybody that they had, as well as all the steering committee people and everybody that provided public input. This was a needed project, and I think it was worthwhile to go through the exercise and to get all this done so that we can really get into the nuts and bolts and really kind of give some direction for people when they're trying to look at doing things downtown.
Now the work for you guys really starts.
It does.
To get that
This
done,
becomes
and then-
this was a project. Now we have many projects. So.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. All right, now we'll move on to item 8, which is resolution 2024-82R, waive bidding and approve police forensic equipment purchase. Howard, welcome.
Good evening. Because I'm asking to waive bidding, I wasn't sure if this should go on the regular agenda or the consent, so I just put it on the regular in case anyone had questions.
It'll have to be on regular agenda when it goes to council.
Yeah.
To waive formal bidding as one, and then the actual award second.
So this is something that we planned in 2023, and when we started looking into this and started pricing some of the equipment for this system, we realized that we really didn't have enough funding. So we rebudgeted in 2024. We started looking at systems, and we worked with Deputy Chief Blowers and Officer Renninger, and we wanted to find a way to improve their process, because what they're doing was pretty cumbersome, and the equipment that they have is outdated. So as we started talking, and Officer Renninger found a company that we saw a few years ago in St. Charles who have this same system. And they are a company that specializes in digital forensics. They put together a whole package, and they sell, different sizes and so forth, but it's one nicely put together package that brings everything together, has all the tools. We will still use the software that we have, but physically it has all the tools, the operating systems, the network switches, an equipment rack, tape backup. I mean, it's got everything. And when we saw the price, we thought, wow, that's much better than what we were going to do. So looking at this system and breaking down some of the numbers, we were looking at about, it came out to about $52,000 for the equipment itself. The rest of the amount was installation, warranty, shipping, and so forth, and that came to a little over $19,000. So we thought that was a really nice deal. The system's warranted for 5 years, and this is a company that understands digital forensics, and they supply things that other companies don't have, such as the hardware write blocking component, which protects the integrity of the evidence. So we thought this was a really nice deal, and we thought this was actually cheaper than what we would have been able to put together going through our channels. And St. Charles is using it, and they seem happy with it. So, anyone
Anybody have
have
any questions? Mark?
Just two questions. What was the budget for this again?
The budget, we had 75,000 budgeted, so we're a couple thousand under.
Is the storage expandable? So if we start getting close?
The storage is 180 terabytes.
Okay.
And it's about 140 usable. And according to Officer Renninger, he feels this is more than enough for the next 5 years. We could always replace it with larger drives if we had to, I'm sure, but he feels this is quite a bit.
Thank you.
I was just more or less curious on the tape library. Is that still normal procedure in the police field?
Well,
I mean, I can see it's tried and true,
Yeah.
you know.
believe it or not, we are still using tape with us, and for air gapping your data, that's a great solution. In their field, the chain of custody is extremely important. So shipping that out to, or opening up the network to ship it out to another company to store, we really don't have any control over what's happened to it. So that's,
No, I figured it was just,
we've had that conversation with them, and yeah, I understand what you're saying. And we
just don't see them often anymore in my world. So it's
Yeah.
I see a tape library. I'm like, whoa.
No, I understand.
I have one question, Howard. I saw in the memo that there's 5 years of maintenance. Is that updates or just, is it regular maintenance that
It should be updates and physical
that'll be
maintenance
covered?
on the machines. Yeah.
Okay.
So we typically like to get the maintenance up front, because we notice that if we wait and get the maintenance in the 4th or 5th year, it tends to be at a higher price by that time.
And that was going to be one of my questions. Is it better to buy that up front and make sure that you have
Yes.
that as part of the package? So that way, if they do find issues with the system or something, that you can make sure that you have that available and not have to pay additional for it later.
That's
Okay.
that's why we like getting it up front.
Pretty much mandatory.
Yeah.
That's where they make their margin too.
And knowing how secure this has to be.
Yeah.
And that,
This is on a completely isolated network. It really is dedicated to, or isolated to one room in the police department. So
questions? Somebody care to make a motion on this one?
Move.
Motion by Ewer, second by Solfa. Roll call, please.
Baraza. Beck. Or I'm sorry, Lancy.
Aye.
Beck. Pieper. Chanzit. Solfa.
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Barron.
Aye.
Lehman. Ayazi. Malay. Ewer.
Aye.
Saron. Vogelsinger.
Aye.
That's 10.
On to council, and again, regular agenda for the waive formal bidding first, and then the resolution after that. Thank you. All right, then we'll move on to project status.
Not really anything major to announce. We do just want to say that we're extremely excited to have been nominated by Congressman Bill Foster's office for a reconstruction of the bike trail around the wastewater treatment facility. It can be up to 8.2 million. It's ultimately dependent on what Congress chooses to do. Per the congressman, they tend to have a pretty good batting average on getting funding for these projects. But we're just very thankful to all of our partners, the park district, the school district, our own staff who were able to put this together in about 2 days, get it to the congressman's office, and we're just very thankful for being selected. We're excited to see where the project goes and ultimately make it happen. A couple of other things. Just a reminder, on June 3rd, so next Monday at 6:30 is the Unity flag raising. So that'll be before the city council meeting. And we've also, like Alderman Wolf said earlier, we've done a number of things to improve communications around Water Street and that detour and the road closures. Please continue to avoid that area. It is an active construction zone. It is not safe to be there. Couple of plan commission items coming up on June 5th. Including a deck variance and some conditional uses for an internet-based car dealership. And additionally, the plat for Batavia Square, which is the former Sam's Club, was recorded, and that'll facilitate the sale to the Tesla dealership. Our fire department was out and about doing a number of inspections of vehicles. There was also a retirees dinner at Station 1 on the 18th. And then we had a number of events, community engagement events with our police department. And we have an upcoming meeting with IDOT about the road diet. And that's all I got.
Questions? Mark?
Maybe I missed it. Whatever happened with the, at Prairie and Wilson, the underground tank?
So the underground tank was found by Nicor Gas, and we were under the impression that any underground tank you find in the right-of-way that you have to take it out. So we have contacted the State Fire Marshal Office, and it is going through the environmental consultant process. It's a long process. So in the meantime, the Parkinson's operator told us that there are 3 more tanks connected to this tank. They're all connected. So we kind of inquired that what happens if we are taking out one tank. And somebody or the consultant told us if the tanks are connected, that most likely fire marshal is going to make us every tank that is connected to that tank. So you're now not only taking out one tank, you're taking out 4 tanks. And it's kind of $50,000 a pop, so it's $200,000. So we looked into, or we inquired into that, what if we don't even take it out? So there is like some rule that came into effect in 1973, June 1st, that if you if the tank was unoperational before that, then they can remain underground. So you don't have to take it out. So what we are looking into now is we have a traffic signal that's going to go into that corner, that how far the traffic signal base is going to be from the tank, whether there is going to be any relocation or do we need to modify the design. So the next step is we are going to actually expose the entire tank, see the limit of the tank, and see how that compares to our design of the traffic signal and other things. If it doesn't interfere, then we are just going to leave the tank. The tank never existed for us. We'll just move on. But in case there is a conflict between the traffic signal and the tank, then we'll look into redesigning it, because redesigning is going to cost us way less than $200,000. So that's what the process is. So it's kind of, we're waiting to expose, because when you're exposing, because it's next to the tank, you have to have environmental consultant. The soil has to go to some special waste, and it's a lot of hoopla. So we are looking into that. So no decision has been made, I guess.
Thank you.
Well, you've got the mic in front of you, Rahat. The meeting with IDOT, that's going to push the schedule back another month and a half. Do we have to wait to July 9th to have a meeting with them?
Yeah, so you know that IDOT had a rule that if the local agencies like us are doing anything to the side road, they want a fire engine to be able to like make the turn without, slowing down or anything. So that's the rule that we are trying to overcome. So they want us to go in front of a committee and ask for a design exception that we are not gonna abide by their rule. So I'm giving a long.
On the road diet, we're going to make the turning radius different or something?
No, they're saying if you are doing road diet, you have to show us that even after the road diet, the trucks can still make the movement. And the trucks don't make the movement, even today, right? So a semi truck doesn't make the movement right now. Like if you are trying to make out of Elm Street or going into Elm Street, trying to turn a truck into Elm Street, you will be going into like the eastbound car. So if somebody is waiting, either they have to let the car go or the car has to back up so that the truck can make the movement. So that exists today. But they're saying that if you're making any changes to Route 31, then you have to make all those side streets compliant. That's where the hang up is. You may not know this. So this is where the hang up is. So what happened is state of Illinois has passed a law last year saying IDOT cannot require that requirement. Now, IDOT lawyers are actually challenging that law with the state of Illinois. And we are, it's not only Batavia, there are few more local agencies that are hung up in the middle of this fight. And now that mayor has sent a couple of letters, they are saying, okay, you come for an exception. So we are going to a July 6th, I think is the meeting. We are going in front of a committee and saying, we want an exception, of that rule. So approve that. And that's when, the final approval of the plans will come through. We are hoping that. So that's what it is.
I have one more question about that, Alan.
Yeah.
So I know like Batavia is not historic district throughout all of Route 31, but can we, use that a lot of Route 31 in Batavia is historic district? Like, does that help us with any of the asking for the exemption?
I think then we'll be probably, I don't want to use that exception because then they will say you have to go in front of a historic board to get an exception from that. So, yeah, I mean, I find it that, meetings with IDOT, you just give the answer there and asking a question about. Don't give more info. Okay. I'll just give a tidbit about this.
Stop being creative.
So last week I had a meeting with IDOT about the main street that we are gonna widen and on the west side or west of Van Northwick. So I was having a meeting with IDOT about the park, Engstrom Park, because that was developed with federal funding. So and I think I have shared this story with many. So we are doing a literally 5 feet by 10 feet sidewalk square that makes the connection at the southeast corner to the park. And because it's developed with federal fund, there is like a lot of things that you have to do about it. I had to go to park board, get approval. They gave us a license agreement. You guys approved it. So still IDOT is not convinced that we are not going to take over the park. They're like, I'm just doing 5 feet by 10 feet. So when we met with IDOT last week and we said, we have crossed the T's and dotted the I's, it's all good. They're like, no, this path is 5 feet wide, but the entire loop is 9 feet wide. So you need to make this path now 9 feet wide. I'm like, you are giving me so much trouble in just doing that 10 square feet. Now you're telling me to like go beyond that. I said, no way I'm doing it because, so they kind of got, mad about it that we are saying we are not. I'm like, we have to go back to, Park District again, get all those approval. And then next thing you are going to tell me that not only this 9 foot, now you have to make the entire thing like 12 feet wide because people are going to bike on it, So you just like stay focused on what you're doing it. So that's just it.
Alan, can I make a couple comments? I get, in my role in Chicago at CMAP, I get to be on the State Transportation Policy Committee with IDOT. So I get the opportunity to have some sidebar conversations in there with them. And they have kind of a joke now about Batavia is an extremely well-run city from a transportation perspective. That's their words. But Batavia is also maybe the pioneering community in the western suburbs that was the first place here. So like he was just talking about at Prairie and Wilson, that may be one of the very first developed corners in the entire county. Right there, Christopher Payne came in 1835, and he's got another story behind him. He did some stuff in upstate New York that wasn't too honorable, and so he took his money and came out to Illinois and bought this plat of land on the east side of the Fox River, and then he talked the railroad into putting the railroad through, and then he got himself the job as the postmaster in Batavia because the train would go right by his house. He lived in the house that Kai Tarum now lives in over at Prairie and Wilson. And that was probably the first real house that was built in Kane County, about 1835. And it had no plumbing and it didn't have a whole bunch of stuff. And a lot of this has been retrofitted into it. And a lot of it was done so long ago. It was done before there were plans or before there was anything really put down. And I remember them joking with me about, well, you're out there and you got streets that don't even have a plan on file because they're so old that they were put in before we formed IDOT and all this other good stuff. So they're working with us, and our staff does such a nice job of trying to conform and get things in the right way in the right place that they don't have any problems with us. They constantly compliment our engineering department to me about how they're so understanding, and they're dealing with stuff that wasn't even on the road or on the map to some degree. And so we're kind of making it up. So we're used as kind of the model historical city in IDOT's mind as the ones that are out here doing stuff that, there was no record of it. It was just done. And then a few years later, we kind of put stuff into place and whatever have you. They joke with me about how the railroad track on the east side comes into Batavia, and it was built so that it could be probably used to pick up limestone, because South River Street, south of Laurel, there were 10 stone quarries down there. And from about 1850 and then in 1871, after the Great Chicago Fire, there was this huge demand to rebuild the city of Chicago in non-combustible materials. So Batavia had the 10 there, and they also had the big one on the west side, which is now the Quarry Swimming Pool. But the advantage was, because Batavia had all these early politicians, we had railroad tracks on both sides of town. And what the quarries needed was to be next to a railroad track. And you could then mine the stone, put it right on the track, and send it into Chicago. And Naperville and Lamont also had that same advantage. So our three towns are the ones that largely rebuilt Chicago after the fire using the limestone. But this South River Street thing it was kind of a lot of it was done without, I guess, anybody's permission. And there were things done down there that probably wouldn't be done today by any stretch of the imagination. And so now the staff is trying to kind of look at South River Street and see how we can kind of re-put that back together in a modernistic sign of the times, because we're back in some days, again, we don't have any records, and nobody else does either. And the question is, how did Batavia get to do all this? Well, as I just explained, we had the limestone, and we had a couple of things going for us that everybody, and you burn down Chicago, there's a big demand, do whatever you need to do to get that limestone into us. So that was one of our advantages that we had. So, and today I take great pride in the fact that specifically at the quarry, the Park District's done a real nice job of remaking that into a quality swimming pool. And that was all made as a piece of history after the Great Chicago Fire. So we just have some interesting stories here that nobody else has to do. And IDOT knows it. They kind of look at us as the model of historical, what do they call it? Historical renovation. We are the city of historical renovation. So I just want to share that with you because it's not a bad thing. They're just saying you get to Batavia, you got to, number one, explore the history and then help them make it up and change what it needs to be done to make it a good place to be. And I think the staff we have is doing that. and your council support.
We just got to get IDOT to get it done before it does become history. I have one more thing that I hate to bring up because we're digging on IDOT tonight. The pedestrian versus left turns on would be North River, well, South River Street and Wilson, with the new configuration that's over there for the crosswalks. I've been down there a couple of times and witnessed a few close calls. Basically, what would be the criteria to determine how long that pedestrian crossing is and how long the turn light is? And can they run separate from each other, or do they have to be together?
So IDOT controls that intersection.
That's why I hate to ask that.
Yeah, IDOT controls that intersection. Typically, IDOT will run it like the pedestrian will cross and the car will yield to the pedestrians. If they are separate cycle, then people on the other side will wait a long time to get their green. We can inquire with IDOT, but I don't think that's a request that they will entertain.
Right, and that's kind of what I felt like, and it's just going to be people have to get used to that, when there's crowds down there.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, does anybody else have any others? Okay, then I will ask for a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Salfa, second by Ewer. All those in favor?
Aye.
Good night, Jen.